Kevin Zhang is the CEO and co-founder of Paytrie, a Canadian stablecoin payments processor and the issuer of CADC. Kevin, we've known each other for a while, so we're gonna kind of start with a softball, but kind of a difficult one too at the same time, which is what is a stablecoin?
Man, Jeremy, you start off with the hard-hitting questions,
It
and
is kind of a hard
honestly,
question.
uh, depending on who you talk to, this definition can be vastly different. Some people only consider a stablecoin as something that you have like money backed in a bank account or treasury that represents the digital form of that backing. Whereas if you talk to other people in the DeFi and crypto space, they consider anything that is fully backed by assets that represent a value that's like more than what is sort of represented. So, like for example, we can have stable coins that represent the U.S. dollar, but backed by different assets. It could be like Ether, it could be Bitcoin, it could be Treasury, it could be anything else that has value that represents more than what is being referenced.
You're kind of painting immediately this difference uh, between a collateralized stablecoin and a
Mhm.
decentralized over collateralized stablecoin. How about we go back and talk for a moment before we go too deep on stablecoins about the company and CADC, which is a CAD denominated stablecoin issued by your company,
Yep.
by Paytrie. What is CADC?
Yeah, no, that's a great start. And CADC is a Canadian dollar stablecoin backed by Canadian dollars or Canadian equivalent of T-bills like GICs and overnight products that basically represent a one-to-one backing or greater than one-to-one backing of Canadian dollars to CADC. And we work with our banking partners to ensure that we essentially put these funds in a trust so that uh, the holders of CADC are the ultimate beneficiaries of the Canadian dollars that are locked up in our traditional banking system that represent the funds that are moving on chain. So um, it simply allows people on the blockchain in crypto to move Canadian dollars freely in a digital and decentralized way.
And I have done this before with CADC. I have sent this to friends in the United States as payment, and then they've gone and figured out how to swap it. So there's like a very real use case there. Most people, anybody that's going to watch this, for the most part, is going to understand, at its basic level, that there is some representation of US dollars happening on chain, whether it's USDT
Mm.
or USDC, which are the two largest US dollar stablecoins, are the two largest stablecoins in the world. And they're also representative of quite different structures or architectures. I don't know what we call that right now, but is CAD-C just like USDC, except it's in Canadian dollars?
I think that's a good frame of reference to take into consideration. Obviously, it's not like exactly like USDC, but it's the closest framework I would say that's out there right now that can be easily captured in terms of what Cassie is doing. We do want to follow the best practices in the industry in terms of like offering and issuing a stablecoin. Circle did a great job with USDC in terms of compliance and the regulatory part of things. So we definitely want to make sure we follow in those footsteps that have like that people sort of laid the foundation on and created these best practices, and we just keep improving on them. So we do our best to provide a consumer protection, have transparency, just be a place where people can trust to hold their Canadian dollars as a representation of the stablecoin that they're holding.
I feel like you met the Circle folks really early in their journey. Like Circle today is issuing USDC and they're issuing EURC, and USDC is probably what $50 billion of like stock outstanding of USDC. When did you meet them?
Yeah, it's actually a really funny story. My co-founder and I traveled all the way to Japan, Osaka in particular, to attend DevCon back in 2019, and the community was small. This was actually just like in the depth of the bear market, so it wasn't even like the most exciting time in terms of like crypto. But there were that's where you meet like a lot of the builders, and it was still very grassroots at the time, and sort of what they call like early days. And we my co-bear and I were taking the subway to and from the conference, and we bumped into who now we consider a close friend at Circle, and really was talking to him about what we were trying to build in Canada, which was a stablecoin on off ramp, allowing Canadians to buy and sell stablecoins. At the time, we were thinking that we would be offering DAI. So if you're familiar with the crypto ecosystem, then you probably have heard of DAI, which is a decentralized stablecoin. But then he shared with us what they were doing at Circle. We obviously have heard of Circle at the time and USDC, but this was like before they even had like $1 billion of assets under management. So it was still really early days in terms of like stable coins. And we were like, we'd love to sort of like support stable coins and offer like, multiple stable coins. Ultimately, whatever the consumer ends up wanting. Doesn't matter if it's like DAI, USDC, or USDT. We want to offer as many options to the consumer as possible. So we like from that conversation on, we started supporting USDC on Paytrie, and we still continue to support USDC on Paytrie today. Whereas we don't support DAI and USDT anymore, even though we previously did due to regulatory reasons.
So you meet these guys from Circle, or somebody from Circle, and you're really interested in stable coins, and you build a payment processor for stable coins so that I can
It
buy
was crazy
stable.
at the time. Like people were asking like why do I want a stable coin? Like this is back in like 2019, right? And ultimately the way that we sort of thought about it, once you have a stable coin, you have access to any other cryptocurrency in the market. It's just the way that the market works. Like Canada is a very small market. If you go to a centralized exchange to buy even Bitcoin or any other crypto asset, you're essentially likely paying a markup to what the global reference price of that product is, because like the Canadian market is smaller, or the exchange just ends up going to a larger global market to get liquidity to meet your order. So ultimately, we sort of want to cut out the middleman a little bit. You don't need the exchange or the centralized exchange to provide that service for you. Once you have a stablecoin, you can go on to decentralized exchanges and buy whatever token you want. And this was really important because this was just coming off the back of the Quadriga CX incident in Canada, where like hundreds of thousands of Canadians lost hundreds of millions of dollars.
You mentioned as soon as you have this stable, you said as soon as you have the stable coin, you can go on chain, you can get access to any cryptocurrency you want. I'm thinking about 2019. Was Uniswap live in 2019? Like how
Just
what were the
barely.
just barely okay because
Ubisoft V1, yeah.
wow. What comes
Curve was
together?
not out. Like Curve came out January of 2020, and it was crazy because that's when we launched Paytrie. We were building it in 2019, and we actually launched January of 2020. And then this thing called Curve comes out, which is a decentralized exchange just for stablecoins. So it was like pairing USDC, USDT, and DAI together and giving them like basically a one-to-one price in a very efficient manner. And we were like, oh my God, this is like mind blowing. Like people are, starting to build on these stable coins. And yeah, Curve was really a pivotal point for stablecoins, I think.
So you're selling USDC to Canadians who want to procure it. I want to procure US dollars sometimes because I'm going to the US and I want cash with me. Um, what was the rest of the list? There's CADC, USDC. What else can I buy through Paytrie?
Uh, as of right now, honestly, you could only buy CADC and USDC due to regulations. But before, we had USDT, we had DAI, we had BUSD, we offered PayPal USD at some point. Um, but yeah, a lot of those we just can't offer anymore due to regulation. So we're down to two. Hopefully, regulations in the space in stablecoins change over time. Right now, they are governed by our securities regulators, and many people believe that stablecoins aren't securities. So why are they being regulated by the securities regulator? We see different jurisdictions around the world, be it Europe, Singapore, the U.S. now, Dubai, and like Hong Kong, a bunch of places around the world are creating policies for stablecoin that are outside of the traditional security, the traditional payment umbrella. And it almost lives in sort of like a silo of the self because of how unique that technology is. And, you know, hopefully Canada sort of understands that and eventually starts to sort of regulate stablecoins in a similar manner compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I had this conversation. I mean, I have this conversation a couple times a week in private, but I had the same conversation with Eric Richmond from Shake Bay, as well as Addison Cameron Huff, who same thing, right? It's like it feels like the Bank of Canada now bringing like PSPs under their regulatory umbrella. It kind of sets the stage, I think, for more types of licensing and regulation for what in the EU and UK you would call an e-money issuer, right? That's
Yep.
fundamentally the closest framework that I've seen to what a stable coin is, which is you're changing the format of money. That's what e-money issuers do as well. So but okay, so now we've got USDC and CADC, and so that makes sense to me. I probably don't need to be able to access 30, 40 different currencies in this way today, given where the industry's at. Are people acquiring USDC and CADC for the same things, or are they completely different use cases?
Um, I think there are certain use cases that they're sort of like interchangeable, but there are also use cases that are very unique to, for example, USDC and CADC. When building out like a stablecoin that is not US dollar, so like CADC, the playbook is very different from a US dollar stablecoin where the US dollar is the global currency. It's the currency that everyone in the world essentially wants and references their currency against. So when you're building a US dollar currency, it, it spans globally and people want it. Whereas when building a Canadian dollar stablecoin, we do think that it is more of a domestic product and it's geared more towards Canadian businesses, Canadian institutions that will predominantly want to access and use it. Um, but that doesn't mean like it doesn't live cross border. We think the Canadian dollar stablecoin is a perfect instrument to provide on chain forex between CADC and USDC, where you can get the best foreign exchange pricing and settlement pricing between Canadian dollars and US dollars and move money, globally. So, for example, I think the term stablecoin sandwich has been coined in the last couple of months, where people are essentially converting local fiat currencies to USDC, sending USDC to somewhere else around the world, and converting that USDC back to local currency. When you think about the way that that transaction works, they're coupling the minting and like the conversion between fiat and crypto with the forex into one transaction between when they do the on and off ramping. What we think is a more efficient model is that you sort of decouple the process of converting between fiat and crypto, which is the minting and burning of CADC, and the foreign exchange component where you can do it on chain instead of off chain. And doing it on chain means you can get more efficient pricing. There are global market makers and liquidity providers that can set a price that is much more capital efficient than having dozens of people off chain doing the same thing and using up more capital. Whereas you can have a single marketplace on chain that provides the best price and is more open for competition in terms of like providing that FX pricing. So basically, the stablecoin sandwich, I think, can be diced up and separated a little bit further, creating a much more efficient rail in the future. We're not quite there right now, given that we don't have a vast array of non-US dollar stablecoins around the world and liquidity pools that are big enough to support large foreign exchange trades. But if you imagine like 1 year, 2 year, 3 years into the future, what would stablecoins look like? I think probably 8 out of 10 people will tell you there will be like dozens of stablecoins in various currencies and huge liquidity pools of these stablecoins on chain. So that's the way that we sort of see the future.
I like the way that you framed what's happening today when people refer to like the stablecoin sandwich, which, Sling Money has done a really good job of this. I'm somewhere in the world and I put money into Sling, and Sling turns that into USDP, which is a Paxos issued product. And
Mhm.
and then they move that and off ramp it on the other side into whatever the local currency is. And it almost feels like, as you said, like DeFi is going to sit in the middle of that transaction, even, and we're going to have locally denominated stable coins on each side, and then we're going to have local servicing on and off ramps on each side as well, right? And that's
Exactly.
fundamentally how the Visa network works, right? Is like you have a messaging layer in the middle, that's a smart contract. You have currencies on the ends, and then you have service providers at the edge of the network KYCing people in and out. So,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, based on that statement, I'm a believer in your thesis.
No, absolutely. And ultimately, like I actually think that like stablecoins are less like a form of money and more like a network. It's all about the network. Like a
Yeah.
stablecoin is nothing without the network.
Yeah, I had to reflect on this in and around the Payments Canada, because I was doing a thing with ShakePay and Alex from ATB, and that was exactly like the perspective that I tried to give people is like, this isn't a one or the other. These money networks are so complex and they're mesh networks that we just need to continuously figure out better ways to connect that mesh, and open, accessible, global, programmable, standardized machine in the middle seems like an obvious next step, you know?
That's exactly the way I think about it, and especially when you think about AI and bots and programmable money, this kind of payment network is going to be so powerful in the future as we sort of automate more and more stuff over time. And yeah, I think it's just like the very beginning of that huge wave of conversion of just like fiat money to digital money to stable coins and so forth.
Let's talk a little bit more about the use cases for CADC. So we talked about the uh, on-chain FX use case where, if each country develops a regulatory framework that supports well-structured, well prudentially regulated stablecoin issuers, then presumably trading between them is going to feel very safe. And if that trading can
Yep.
happen, uh, using blockchain, then it's going to be efficient and programmable too. What else are you seeing in the here and now as it relates to CADC?
Yeah. So CADC and the blockchain in general, is a very interesting technology and very different from what we have available right now in terms of payments in Canada. So if you think about like our payment options in Canada, there's Interact, which almost everyone is familiar with. But there's a lot of issues with Interact in terms of okay, there's generally what we consider low limits. You can do like up to like $10,000 a day. Um, there essentially you can't buy anything that's like larger than $10,000, and I guess like businesses easily transact more than $10,000 a day, and the the finality of it is a little bit I would say questionable. There are chargeback risks in terms of like Interact, and ultimately we want to provide a 24/7 real-time payment. I would say chargeback free because like I think there are still a means to sort of like reversible transactions. Right now, the blockchain isn't, I would say, capable of doing that. But I think there are certain chains that are looking at building payment networks that have this capability. Um, but ultimately, we think at the very beginning, it will likely be used for businesses and businesses to move money to and from each other in real time, especially I guess, payment related businesses, mainly because the movement of funds and the finality of funds is very important that you can't actually do right now with existing payment networks like EFTs and wire transfers in Canada. Uh, we think that the crypto businesses in Canada will likely be the first and early adopters of this technology just because they're more familiar with it. And then eventually, you get into areas like the fintech players in the ecosystem. So Canada has a sizable fintech ecosystem, not as big as the US, obviously, but I think we have a good selection of fintechs that are trying to disrupt various parts of, I guess, like commerce. In terms of like real estate, in terms of like auto, in terms of credit cards, in terms of like, large everyday items that like Canadians buy and use, like Shopify, for example,
I was just gonna
is
say,
built
like,
in
this is,
Canada.
I mean, uh, how timely that we're having this conversation because Shopify did an announcement last week at Coinbase's annual conference or whatever it is, and and I guess the spirit, you can correct me here, but I guess the spirit of the announcement is they are going to turn on USDC payment acceptance for any merchant on their platform if they so choose to just toggle it on and it'll just work.
Yeah, it's that simple, right? Like when you think about it, if I were a merchant, would I rather accept credit card payments or USDC? For me, obviously I'm a little bit biased here and crypto native, but I would take USDC because it's this element. Chargeback risk is lower. I don't get charged nearly as many fees, if any, to receive the USDC. And ultimately, it's just as easily interchangeable to, I guess, like fiat dollars as, I guess, like credit card payments that come in like days or weeks later with, I guess, like chargeback risk from the consumer. So if I could, I would always take USDC over, traditional payments.
Now, I don't know about the assumption that it's going to be cheaper because certainly, the payment processors, I think, are looking at this as an opportunity for margin expansion, right? As opposed
No,
to
no, definitely.
giving back to
But
merchants.
even
But
if they do make money, like it's still a much smaller amount than like what the merchants pay today at like around 3% and up.
and or it's better than the obfuscation of like where that money goes because like 99% of
Yeah,
people don't understand that the merchant is paying 3%, so they're passing it on to you, and then the money's going to the credit card issuer, and the credit card issuer is passing a little wee bit back to you in the form of points, which they can change the terms on anytime and are difficult to use. And so there's this whole
Devalue
obfuscation
it.
of what's happening that I think we would love to solve. You said that crypto companies would likely be the first to adopt stable coins at any scale, or in like mission critical parts of their business. And then you said, and then the fintechs. I kind of look at them as one and the same at this point. I know many of the fintechs take the perspective that they are payment rail agnostic. It's like whatever the customer wants. If there's demand for a payment rail, they want to support it for that customer, and because they don't have any legacy baggage to carry around, and middle managers somewhere else to worry about, that person's line of business and their bonus or whatever. I think that for the most part, these fintechs can adopt something like Fireblocks, which is wallet management infrastructure, like enterprise grade wallet
Exactly.
management infrastructure, and that's no different than adopting, a partner infrastructure to access the Interac rails. And so, like, we're kind of already there. Like, Wealth Simple has a crypto division. They presumably have some enterprise wallet management capability that underpins, their custody offering and the money movement in and out of the platform in the form of digital assets. They can kind of already do this. So what's going to be what's going to be the match that lights this thing up?
I think ultimately it's going to be there needs to be like a reason why these companies use it. It just can't be just a little bit better. It needs to actually solve a problem for these companies. And I think from a crypto company perspective, it is the 24/7, always on, always access to liquidity type of narrative that will enhance business efficiency and operations that you just can't do right now with traditional like payment rails because of their downtime. Essentially, after a certain time of the day, you can't send a wire transfer on evenings and weekends, holidays. Like that just doesn't work. But look at the crypto space; it is 24/7 market. It is always on. Doesn't matter if you're sleeping. The price will still move. People are still buying it in Asia. People are still selling it in Asia. So you need modern payments to help with modern, I guess, like economies and markets that are available today. And we think that stable coins like CADC can help bridge that gap in terms of providing access to liquidity, access to markets 24/7 that you can't do right now. And we're looking to build products around this like idea and narrative where we can sort of bring this system online for our end users, which we think will likely be crypto business initially. And eventually, like you said, even the non-crypto businesses will start coming on board because they understand and see this capital efficiency, can see that uh, there's a better way of doing it, essentially.
So just to kind of try to frame it in my own language, I go and I buy digital assets from Wealth Simple or Coinbase or whoever, and they need to either have an inventory of those assets to sell me, or they need to go get those assets. And when they go and get those assets, they need to pay for those assets. And there is a fundamental problem, which is that there's 2 days of the week where they don't really have a way to make that payment. Is that fair?
Yeah, like there's no easy way. They would have to hold funds over these 2 days as some kind of like float or like some kind of just like money that they just like have to leave there to facilitate the operations of the business. That could be better used elsewhere.
Yeah, and when money moves in real time, it obviates the need for that, I guess.
Exactly, exactly. So if you can always convert between fiat and crypto to fiat, then it would just make your liquidity needs of holding both across these downtime periods of like long weekends and so forth that much less of an issue and less capital intensive.
And presumably, like, if I'm using ShakePay or, pick any number of examples, and they can connect to these rails and they can manage these stable coins on behalf of users, like the FX eventually becomes surfaced in that experience, or maybe me transacting between ShakePay and Monzo on the other side of the pond. Presumably that's where like the FX thing starts to come in, and then it starts to compound on itself in terms of the use cases and utility of it.
Yeah, it'd be insane if we can just start using, I guess, like fintech apps like, ShakePay or Wealthsimple, or it doesn't matter what it is, and then send money to other fintech applications overseas, like, Monzo, Revolut, whoever, and everything is literally just done on chain. FX component, the fiat component, the crypto component, it's gonna be make money move just as easy as like me sending you an e-transfer. We think that's like cool, a fairly simple user experience. But now if I try to send $5 to someone in Europe or in Asia, you're gonna have to step back and think, how am I gonna do this? What am I gonna do to send it? Like, is there even a way to send $5? If I go to my bank and try to send $5 to like Europe, they're going to charge me $50 for a wire fee, and then I'm going to end up paying $55 to try to send $5. So how do we sort of like change the way money moves around the world and make it almost as easy as sending a text message?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. You were the first blockchain hire at TD. Did I read that correct?
First technical blockchain hire. So the VP that I worked with was tasked to assemble a team to look into uh, blockchain digital assets for the bank. This is back in 2015, and I was brought in as the technical person to really look into this from a technical perspective. There were people looking at it from sort of like a business perspective, but I was sort of doing it from like, okay, how do we use this technology to make it more efficient? And this was just around the time when like Ethereum just came out, contracts just came out. So it was like, developing on the very first versions of Solidity.
Yeah, I mean, and fast forward to today, like, yesterday there's all these rumors about JP Morgan launching a consumer coin. I mean, they've already got JPM coin on their permissioned Onyx, I think it's called, blockchain network.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's clear recognition from even some of the biggest players in the world that this technology is quite interesting, and it definitely solves, like, that Onyx blockchain would be all about a treasury use case for large corporates, right? So it seems pretty clear that that's going to play out. Why or how? Not why, because you can't really answer on behalf of the banks here. But like, how do you think they get involved? Where do you think what piques their interest, aside from clear regulation?
I'm gonna be honest, Canadian banks, and I've worked out at three out of the five major Canadian banks in the past, and generally, what I see and sort of feel is that they love doing like proof of concepts and sort of like thinking about the problem. But once it gets into sort of like a more production like system, it becomes much more complicated. They have to go through their compliance departments, and if you want to sort of create a network of like, let's just say the five banks, the major five banks in Canada, like, and each and every one of them has to do that with their own internal compliance departments and build these systems. It's gonna take a long time, and like you really have to have a lot of conviction to sort of like push that up to the top unless it really comes from the top down where the man at the top says like, okay, we need to do this. It becomes a much harder battle for like innovation teams within these large organizations to really push like a business case and I guess like generally new product and innovation in something like blockchain and crypto, like for the bank to use. And because of that, I think Canadian banks have generally been a little slower to adopt this kind of technology. They're a little bit more risk averse. They like to wait until they see proof that it is sort of working probably down in the US before they sort of like do something on their own. And I've talked to like these organizations even after I've left, and I think generally it's still sort of at that place where we haven't really seen any momentum in terms of doing real crypto stuff. They still think of everything as sort of like a permission internal network, but the power of uh, the blockchain and what it does is that it is an open permissionless network, and that's where you get the best value out of the technology instead of like possibly even using a database to replace the ledger that they're all talking into like communicating with. So I think there needs to be like something that really pushes them and kicks them in the butt to really start the adoption process of cryptocurrency and blockchain.
Certainly. I mean, and I don't blame the banks, right? Like there's just no
I don't
business
blame
case.
that.
There's no business case for stable coins right now that should be discussed like at the ET meeting at Royal Bank. You know what I mean? Like you can get educated around it, but for them to, for them to put down the writ to the 14 people in the management chain that would need to ponder this thing, like it's just not, it's just such a big distraction until it's
Yeah,
not, right? And I think as I alluded to, like the biggest impediment to them getting involved is we haven't passed any legislation to define what these things
yeah,
are, and we haven't set any policy objectives about why we would be passing that legislation to define what these things are. And until that happens, they know they can't build a big enough business because they can't build big businesses on the fringe. They're a
yeah.
bank, and I think they have a desire to get involved. I think it's genuine, but at the same time,
I think the risk and reward isn't there yet for them,
for sure.
and I think they have the luxury of waiting without really having anything be too impactful, and they sort of I think in the back of their mind know that like if it does become a thing, they can try to catch up, and they have the sort of market share to catch up and be that voice of the industry. But I guess until they start losing business to other players that can provide faster, cheaper options, it won't hit their bottom line at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they have to resign to the fact that they're going to lose consumer payments entirely. Like nobody's doing
Yeah,
consumer bank payments directly on top of a bank in 40 years. Like it's not possible. They're trying to
yeah,
do a very difficult job that is systemically important in creating financial products that don't damage our economy and damage people's lives, and at the same time trying to build user experiences around consumer payments. I mean, I just don't see how that's possible or why we're protecting their consumer payments business from from a policy perspective. But let's zoom ahead on the consumer payment side, and maybe maybe we'll finish with this. CADC 10 years from now, like, does every Canadian know what CADC is 10 years from now?
I actually think the answer is no. I think that CADC ends up being an instrument that people use and they don't even realize they're using. It doesn't matter if you're holding CADC or CAD at the end of the day. That's what we want to get it at. So the partners that we work with can hold your Canadian dollars as CADC and you will never. I would say you would never know. They will probably disclose it to you, but it shouldn't matter to you because the casting that they're holding is just a little bit more efficient than holding Canadian dollars at a bank for them. It's more liquid. It's easier to move. But at the end of the day, your app that you're holding on your phone will literally just say 1,000 Canadian dollars, but it is backed by 1,000 CADC, which in turn is backed by 1,000 Canadian dollars. Will your like everyday Canadian know what CADC is? I don't think so, and we might not want them to know what CADC is. Ultimately, it's something that is we believe going to be in the background and supporting businesses and providing just a better way of moving money.
because money is a network.
Exactly. Exactly. We think of CADC more of, it's the CADC network. It's not CADC the stablecoin.
Oh, that's interesting. I was going to wrap it up for you, but now you have to keep talking about this for a minute. Okay, so think about CADC as the network, not as the coin. Can you expand on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Like, what is a stable coin? And when you fundamentally think about it, it's just a digital form of the dollar, and it's only as useful as the people that will accept it and use it. And ultimately, like it's not about holding the stable coin. It's about using the stable coin and about moving the stable coin. And we think that the network is like, 100 times more important like than the actual physical asset in itself. The physical asset is a smart contract, and I think essentially anyone can do and provide a meaningful way of tracking, you know, a bank ledger to I guess a digital ledger like the blockchain. But it is building the network of participants, and that's what you know Circle did really well. Is there's just a vast amount of distribution points and the ability to sort of um, use USDC. Whereas when you think about it, let's take another step back. You have competitors like Paxos and PayPal. PayPal is a giant in the payment space. They have their own stable coin. It doesn't have nearly the traction that USDC has, and it's because they don't have that distribution point in terms of like the global distribution points that Circle and USDC does. Um, they do have the retail distribution point, which is definitely something that's sort of important, but they have not been able to sort of like crack sort of the liquidity provider piece of thing, a piece of the network, and I guess like the global distribution point where I can bring one PYUSD to almost any country in the world, and there will be someone that will accept it. You have that in Tether, and you have that in USDC. You can probably find some vendor. It could be, some guy in a convenience store that will just, take your crypto and give you cash. It could even be people delivering you cash, to your house or to where your hotel because you have crypto, like depending on, the market you're in. And I think that's what is so powerful about these two stable coins. It's their vast global network of distribution points. So yeah, I think the network is just the ultimate thing. The stablecoin itself is nice and all, but it's all about the network.
I love that because yeah, I'm still just if they ask me behind the counter that how are you going to pay? I say I'm paying with my phone, and if I know that I'm paying directly with Canadian dollars through ShakePay or Wealthsimple or Neo or Coho, and ultimately what's happening under the covers is that they're using the CADC network in order to move that money around in real time for next to or no cost to the merchant or myself. I think that's the story. I think that's the story. Listen,
Yeah,
man, thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you around town.
no, I appreciate it, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.